Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Glenn, and I wanted to talk about some of the books I've read recently. It's been a few minutes since I've done a video. I think it's been well over 3 weeks, probably close to four. There's just kind of been a lot going on. About 3 weeks ago, I had a little procedural thing, a colonoscopy, and that went pretty well. Excuse me, but there was some preparation for that and some recovery from that. And kind of right after I had my little procedural thing, we had a storm here, a snowstorm, snow and ice, and just things have just not been has not been easy to get around, and but those are not really I guess those are not really completely the reason, but somehow I just kind of lost the touch of setting up the video camera, and just wasn't feeling really inspired to shoot a video. But here I am trying again, and but I have done some reading, and I wanted to talk about a few of the books that I've read. One of those is Henry V by Dan Jones. Both of these books I'm going to talk about are British history. And I've read several of Dan Jones's books before. And so I picked up this book last year, got it for half price at Barnes and Noble, and had read about half of it maybe last year, and just ended up setting it aside and getting distracted with other interesting items, and I just felt like into the new year I wanted to try and get back to some of the books that I had DNF'd, and I wanted to try to be a little bit more intentional and a little bit more consistent about my reading. And so one of the books I thought I wanted to finish reading was Henry V, and I didn't know anything about him, or certainly hadn't remembered anything about him before. And just a little brief summary: Henry V served as the King of England from, I'm going to say, 1413 to 1422, just 9 years. He was 35 years old when he died. He was quite the warrior king, and actually the subheading or subtitle of this book is The Astonishing Triumph of England's Greatest Warrior King. And he fought a number of battles in France and was responsible for capturing quite a bit of property in the Kingdom of France, and having that set aside for England and the English king. And he actually managed to get himself the title of King of France as well at the very end of these battles, but he didn't really live long enough to get all the fruit of his victories. But he was a strong leader, I guess, in many respects, but very violent man, and a very as far as England was concerned, trying to conquer and obtain more territory. And so I have, like I said, I've enjoyed reading the histories by Dan Jones, and thought this would be a pretty good addition, and it was. The book is a little bit unusual in that it is written in the present tense, and Dan Jones explains why he does this in the beginning of the book. And for the most part, I think it works pretty well. It's a pretty easy read. It clocked in at about 350 pages, and once I kind of committed myself to it, it was a pretty easy book to read. And I do think the structure of the writing, the present tense, is a little bit different. I think it made sense in some ways for Jones to do it this way, but I also think it lacked maybe just lacked a little bit of little more objectivity. I don't know if it was the tense or if it was just sort of Dan Jones's style of writing. I hadn't read anything by him in a while, and so yeah, that was just my thoughts about that. So I came away with this knowing more about Henry V and a little bit about this era in time. And I followed this book up with a read or a reread of The Wars of the Roses by Alison Weir. And Dan Jones has written a book called The War of the Roses as well. I have that, and I believe I have read that too. So I think I have read both of these books on the Wars of the Roses, but I didn't really remember anything from them. And because the War or Wars of the Roses pretty much follow the life of Henry VI, who was the son of Henry V, I thought it made a lot of sense after reading about Henry V to jump in again to the Wars of the Roses so I could kind of continue the story. And I decided to do that by reading Alison Weir's version of the story, just because I wanted to hear a different voice and get a different sense of what the story was about, to kind of provide a bridge between Henry V and the Wars of the Roses. As I said, Henry V was succeeded by his son Henry VI. Henry VI had just been born when his father died. I think he either just been born or was like about a year old. So obviously there was a regency that sort of ruled the kingdom until Henry VI became able to take the throne in his own right. As it turns out, Henry VI was a much different king, much different man than his father. He was not nearly as bold of a leader or decisive or as much of a warrior. And so his reign was rather fitful, and it gave way to a challenge from the Duke of York. And ultimately, that was kind of how the Wars of the Roses got going in the, I'm going to say, 1550s, 1560s. I think it went on for about 20 years or so. There were a couple of different rebellions, and the Henry VI sort of ended up surviving, I guess, as long as he did, because his wife was from, I believe, the Kingdom of France, and she was actually a much bolder and sort of forceful leader than he was, and she was responsible for sort of trying to kind of buck up his reign and take on the challenges that came to his throne. But ultimately, he did finally, there were a couple of kind of like a football game or baseball game where the lead changes several times during the game. There were different changes in leadership in the country of England. Henry first lost his throne and then gained it back, and then lost it again, and then the son of the Duke of York, who became the Duke of York himself, became Edward IV, and so he as a member of the York family took the kingship away from the House of Lancaster, and that was who Henry V and Henry VI were descendants from. And so the War of the Roses that's a term that refers to the war between the houses of Lancaster and the House of York. And Edward IV of the House of York reigned until the 1880s, and then he died, and he was succeeded by his son, who was a child, and I believe he had two male children, who were, or his two older male children were, I think, Edward and Richard, but the regency was taken over by Edward IV's brother Richard, and Richard, who became Richard III, and as most people believe, he had his nephews Edward and Richard sent to the Tower in London and had them killed. And then Richard III was himself usurped by Henry Tudor, who would become Henry VII and launch the famous or infamous Tudor dynasty that would last for the next century or so. So that's just sort of a quick overview. I might have gotten some of the details and names wrong. I enjoyed reading this book. Alison Weir is also a very good writer, very good historian, she's very, very easy to read. I think with books like this that span multiple decades, and it's sometimes a little bit hard to keep track of who all the figures are and what they're up to and who is aligned with who. Some of the problem being that the naming of the various characters may refer to their first name, Richard, Edward, James, whoever, and their last name, and then you've got they are named after the area or the house for which they have control, the Duke of York, the Duke of Lancaster, the Earl of something or other. So it's sometimes a little hard to kind of keep track of who's who and who's aligned with who and what's going on. But other than that, I enjoyed rereading this book, and so I think I got a good little snapshot again of British history during the 1400s, and so with these books under my belt, I'm going to jump into some other reading for 2026. But I just wanted to get back onto YouTube, kind of get my feet wet again, making videos, and I hope to be back soon with an update on some of the new books I've got and books that I'm currently reading, but I'll do that in another video. So just want to say thanks for watching, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.